recovering from my infection in my legs. Here's a good old one from 1986. I did one the other night with Dale Walker, crystal expert in Los Angeles at the time. And this was one of his students here that's going to be on this episode I'm going to show. He was with him on the one I have from the other night, but he didn't talk but a little bit. So here is Master Ho of what at the time was Heidi Ho Enterprises. Los Angeles was quite the new age scene back in the 70s and 80s, especially after the Meyer thing blew up and with the health conscious 70s and then coming into the 80s. Lots of great historic new age places came about, or at least got some recognition because of the movement. Such bookstores such as the Bodhi Tree and Alexandra too. Yeah, they'd also put on seminars and all kinds of stuff that we should have at colleges here in the United States or in the planet, pretty much. Learn how to do these different techniques and at your leisure, research what you want. But here we go. We're gonna go ahead and go with the man. Let's see. Oh, okay. Here we're gonna go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's a Saturday night. It's open mic. I'm Bill Jenkins, and we're going to get into something that has always intrigued me, and it seems to have intrigued you. Every time we mention the subject, my phone says crazy, my mail goes crazy. And we're going to talk about that amazing, marvelous, living little creature known as the crystal. The crystal. The quartz crystal. They abound everywhere, all over the earth. They grow and they do fantastic things. I think one of the most fantastic things they do, if it wasn't for a quartz crystal, you would not be hearing me tonight. Because we have to use the quartz crystal and Big Blue, the transmitter there. You wouldn't hear any radio station or watch any television station without the quartz crystal. Another amazing thing about a quartz crystal is that, but it's not important, except to me. I have one in my spa. It's about the size of your finger or your thumb. And I never have to put chlorine in my spa. Sorry about that, Dow Chemical Company, but too bad. I don't like chlorine in my water anyway. And the water in my spa is always crystal clear. I also have one in my refrigerator. And I run the refrigerator at about a third of what I ordinarily would run it. And the refrigerator is always crystal cold. What's going on with the crystals? What are these amazing little things doing around us? Well, to find out about that, a young man who has been with us quite often. He's certainly a friend to Open Mind. He's a friend to many of you. He is a lecturer, goes around the country lecturing on the amazing property of crystals. He's been here before, but never in the chair, as it were, there. We simply call him Ho of Heidi Ho Enterprises. Ho, welcome to Open Mind. Push
There we are.
button there, right?
We're on now. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a marvelous show, and as you know, we've listened to it and supported it for years.
I know you have, and I appreciate all the work that Heidi Ho has done, and certainly your work in crystals. And of course, by the way, we might as well just touch on it now. You can get into UFOs. You're just kind of a rather rounded metaphysical person.
Well, crystals was the last thing that I got into.
Oh my goodness.
It was long at the end of the line. I started off really involved in UFOs. I was so fascinated. You have to go back to the 60s where there weren't a lot of bookstores. There were not a lot of centers or teachers. If you wanted books on the metaphysical subjects, you went into one of the major publishers and you found astrology books under the heading occult. It's a lot different now. But back then, I was very interested in things that were a little above or beyond or to the side of what we would call science. I'd had a few experiences of my own that just could not be answered in a normal way. And my first interest was really UFOs. And I was teaching UFOs for a long time before I was doing some of the other things. But, I have a background in radio and television, which we don't talk about very much, but I did that for 15 years, and I kind of put metaphysics in the closet because the people I was dealing with weren't ready for it.
Open the closet, get it out.
Yeah,
Speaking of UFOs, Paul Shepard will be our guest next week. Paul has been I guess for the last 6 weeks or so, down in South America, chasing a UFO. And he will relate to us the fascinating stories that happened to him down there. And he has videotape of it. He was the guest of governments, and he was the guest of generals. They're the high politicians and the high military people in South America know that there are UFOs. They scrambled their Air Force the other day for them, and they do exist. Also, hundreds of people that he interviewed and he was with. We're talking about very substantial leaders of the community and some of the people who have had some ongoing experiences with him. One man is very upset with his ongoing experience with him, but Paul will be telling you that next week.
Marvelous young man, I know him.
Oh, he's a terrific guy, and he was down there doing the Indiana Jones trick for 6 weeks in the Brazilian and Argentine jungles. So that'll be fascinating next week.
Look forward to that, yes.
Okay, what is it about crystals? Why does this capture everybody's imagination? Why are they so important?
There are so many ways to start that kind of a question. Although let me start from a point of view that I had never really expressed before, which is that if we believe in a metaphysical way that everything began with spirit, the great spirit, what some people would call nature or some people would call God, the first thing that happened was the creation of the earth.
Well, the creation of the universe, but the earth
was in there.
A little bitty tiny part of it somewhere along the way.
Somewhere, certainly before man or animal or vegetable. And the planet is really a crystal ball. Quartz crystal, is the most common mineral on the planet. It's the building block for almost everything else. And from there, the spirit expressed itself further down the line in the animal forms, still using minerals. In the plant forms, of course, before that, and finally in man, because we are nothing more than, as somebody put it the other day, half a tub of water and 2 handfuls of minerals. So minerals are really the building block of everything, and crystals, I was fascinated from the very beginning. I knew that there was something about them that was a pull. I would go into lapidary stores and pick them up and hold them and get the feeling that there was something different about them. But as far as doing anything with them, that was a long way coming. For me, when Dale Walker, who is my teacher, wrote the Crystal Book, that was the first book ever written that really said how to do anything with them. And so that's where I started, as one of his teachers. And from there, it's just phenomenal how many different areas you can go into with them. Because we've talked about things on this show that get very practical from the standpoint of water and gasoline. And I have to tell you, you must have the most famous spa in the history of California. Everywhere I go, people ask me about that story.
Well, you've seen the spa?
Yeah, I have. And not only that, we gave you the crystal. I'm just glad to know it works.
It does work.
No, that's funny. People still call me up and say, I heard about it on the show. I tried it, and I'm surprised that it does work. But it does. People will get a very noticeable change in their spa or in their drinking water.
Certainly the drinking water.
Oh, yeah. That's very important to us. So that's really where we got started. But then we started moving into other areas, which we've never really discussed on this show. The areas of using crystal to reprogram the way we think, or to use crystals for balancing different forms of energy, with what some people would call crystal healing, or using crystals to meet spiritual guides and teachers. We have Dr. Peoples, who's been here many times, and he'll say to the listeners, yes, this is the name of your spirit guide.
Right.
So one afternoon, we had Dr. Peoples in for a presentation, and because Heidi Ho does a number of things besides our own crystal tours, we had Dr. Peoples in, and I said to him, I've listened to you say to all these people, this is the name of your spirit guide, that's the name of your spirit guide, for the price of a phone call, you can find out. And I finally said, isn't that a little easy? What about those people who worked for years to get in touch with their guides? And he leaned over and he sort of giggled the way he does, and he said, Ho, it may give them the name of their spirit guide, but they're not any closer to talking to them.
Yeah.
So using crystals, we have techniques for doing that. There's an actual simple reason for it. When you hold a quartz crystal, your brainwave pattern changes and goes into the alpha state, which is where all the relearning is. So we've been using that for reprogramming, changing patterns, changing bad habits, getting over emotional blocks. We've done a certain amount of work with veterans and rape victims and child abuse victims to get them over the trauma of the emotions of what they've gone through. There are are so many areas that when I started working on my crystal book, which is probably 3 or 4 years down the line, we had to divide it up into something like 20 different areas, which go all the way from mind, body, and spirit out to UFOs and earth elements.
It just dawned on me. I said that Paul would be here next week. Next week the Dodgers are here. It's week after next that Paul will be here. Speaking of UFOs, if the Dodgers give us time, John Medini will be here. And he uses crystals.
Yeah, I know.
I have in front of me this beautiful pyramid made out of a crystal, and it's a marvelous color.
That's an amethyst. It's a purple color.
But what is amazing to me is as you put your hand over it, you feel energy coming off it. It's like a little cold breeze on your hand.
Well,
explain that to me. Why is that so?
Well, the pyramid itself, first of all, generates a certain amount of energy. That's what the pyramids are all about. And then your crystal is an amplifier, so it will amplify the energy that comes off of it. Now, this is a little hard on the radio because your people can't see this, but here's the clear pyramid. I brought up 5 tonight. That's the one I've brought you before that you've mentioned on the air.
Yeah, that does it too.
And that will do it, as will the rose, which is a pink color. And it's sort of a light pink. They will all do it. But the color will give them a slightly different energy feel.
There is a change. There's a difference in the energy that's coming off of them.
See, now,
as we feel them.
I feel that the rose is a lighter energy than, say, the purple amethyst. It's hard to really describe those. But it's a little lighter because it's working in a different area. The pink color really works with the emotions, the emotional field, the etheric body. The amethyst works on the spiritual levels, and it's also the great transformer, the purple color. So they will do different things, but they will all do what pyramids do. And it's sort of like the power of the pyramid times the power of the crystal.
You know, you were talking about how crystals seem to be the basic building block of everything. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Reif, who was a doctor that lived here in the Chatsworth area for a while? He developed probably the most amazing microscopes that the world has ever seen. They were superior even to the electron microscopes that we have today. There's only one of them left, and it's in the Los Angeles area. And he could look down with that microscope and see the cancer virus. And he determined, and he looked at it, and he said that it was crystal. It was a crystalline substance. And his experiments, which have been well documented, and we'll do a show on the Reich microscope here one of these days, and Dr. Reich's work, he could shatter that cancer crystal with an electronic pulse. This did upset a lot of people. And those microscopes were destroyed, and so was his work, and he died a pauper because he was only going to get rid of disease. We'll go into that a little bit later.
Yes.
But the story of Dr. Reif is one of the great tragedies of our time, of what society did to this man that was on the verge of making probably one of the greatest medical discoveries. In fact, he did make it. It was done. But then, again, illness is business. Big business.
Well, we deal with crystal as fossilized water. And we do have a technique. I'm not going to go into too much medical things tonight because I'm not a doctor and I don't pretend to be. But we do have some techniques that we've worked on with people who have various physical diseases. And when I say we, I mean crystal awareness, which is, I work under Dale Walker. And Dale has his teacher, Nick Nocerino, who's also been here.
Nick will be here October 11th. Again, we'll go into the crystal skull, which perhaps we can talk about.
We can talk about that tonight. Well, we have a major tour scheduled this week, and we will have those pictures available so people... We just had them up at the First International Crystal Congress in San Francisco, which, by the way, I want to thank you in the name of all those people up there because the publicity and the interest generated from this show is definitely reflected in the turnout that we had up in San Francisco.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was a marvelous turnout. Almost all the major crystal authors, Marcel Vogel was there, Rob Bonowitz, all the major people were up there doing presentations and lectures, and it was just the first time that's ever happened.
So was the Mitchell Hedges skull.
Yes, I spent quite a bit of time with that.
Well, there's a little bit of something for us to kind of let you whet your appetite on. We'll talk about crystals. We have Ho here, who certainly is as conversant with them as anyone in the world. We could talk about the crystal skull. And I'll point you to October 11th when Nick Nocerino will be back to go further into that fascinating artifact. Probably one of the most fascinating, if not the most fascinating artifact on the planet today. But certainly Master Ho has dealt with it. He knows about it. You can talk to him on that. And let me give you the numbers. If you're ready to talk crystals, we are in Los Angeles if you wish. Certainly UFOs. Poe is with me. Lectures all over the country, certainly well known here in the Southern California area. He's with Heidi Ho Enterprises, and they are always stirring up something over there to enlighten you and invigorate you. We try. And make you a better person, perhaps. All right, Martha, welcome.
Yes. I went to a crystal, seminar type thing, and I bought about 3 crystals, and I put them in my jacuzzi, and I had no response. I mean, it was still, algae and still, all that, even though I kept it,
Well, you still have to put the little ion coagulants in the water. You know, the Spa Bright and the Spa Defender?
yeah, well,
You're still putting that in, aren't you?
well, the, chlorine or whatever,
No, not your chlorine. This is the stuff, the blue stuff that's in the bottle, and
No,
the light blue stuff. You have to do that. Because if you don't, the stuff that is in the water naturally, like dirt and
Yeah.
stuff off your body whenever you get in there, and minerals, just go right through the filter. So you put the coagulants in, which is what they call Spa Bright and Spa Defender. You have to do that. Because the crystal is killing the algae, but if the algae is not being trapped in your filter, you're going to have murky water.
Well, I was just concerned because I put them in. I went to this seminar and I put them in, and I thought, well, you know what, the algae is going to be dissolved, and it just absolutely wasn't.
No, it
And I
absolutely
was
is
very
killed.
disappointed.
Now, Martha, did you pick up what we would call points, or did you pick up clusters?
No, it was like a long bar.
Okay, that's what we call a crystal point. And sometimes, you see, you have to understand something.
No.
This has not been scientifically proven. We don't have the facilities at this point with crystal work to be able to go in and do lots and lots of tests and go back and forth and come up with lots of answers. Some of these things seem to work, and we're not always sure why. And that's why when sometimes, on occasion, maybe 1 out of every 10 people it won't work for, we are not always sure why. But one thing that we've come up with is that a cluster, you see, with a point, the energy is coming off of the point, and it's like having one hose of energy.
Yes.
But with a cluster, it's like having lots of little points, so it's like having a fountain.
But it's no fun to sit on one of those in the spa.
No, it's not. And so we came up with something that maybe...
But I have 3.
Right.
And, 1 long one and 2 little ones.
Right, and if you put them in the spa, you may get so much of a change. What I'm suggesting is that if you put in clusters in its place, you have more crystal points causing more activity.
Okay, now where do I get the cluster?
Okay, but let me go back 1 second because there's another thing I want to mention because Bill brought up a very important point. Not only is it not nice to sit on one of those clusters, it also isn't very nice to stand on them because they can be sharp and you can get the bottoms of your feet cut. So what we've been doing is we've taken crystal and we're crushing it down so it's in lots of little pieces and then tumbling it so it's smooth and putting, say, 2 or 3 tablespoons of this material into the toe of a stocking. And then when you tie it off, the crystal, the water can go through the crystal and get all that energy, but you're not going to stand on the crystal and cut yourself. Because we're very concerned about small children and animals. Do a lot of work with that, and we just don't want to see anybody get hurt.
Right.
Now, as far as where you can get that from, I don't know if most of the laboratory stores are going to be carrying the crushed tumbled quartz, but we will have some...
I could crush it with a hammer or something,
Well, you can crush it, but then you're going to have lots of little what will look like glass chips.
Yeah.
What we have is all the little chips have been smoothed, so that if they fall out of the bag again, nobody will get cut on them. And we will be having a very large crystal tour starting tomorrow, and we'll talk a little more about that later on.
Let's also understand, Martha, that we're not saying that there's anything scientific about this. I'm just saying I've had a crystal in my spa for 5 years, and I don't use
I heard
chlorine.
you say that.
And it
It
has...
works for me.
And so I instantly put it in there and because, hey.
But put you have to put the coagulants in. Go to your spa store and get the Spa Bright and the Spa Defender.
Okay.
That makes your filter work. Without it, the stuff just goes right through your filter because the crystal is killing algae, and the
Right.
algae has to go somewhere. And So it does. It's good.
Right.
It's organizing the water and not allowing any of the little things to grow too much. Except
Okay.
whenever the water is agitated, then
Right.
the effect of the crystal doesn't work whenever you're bubbling it. But whenever it's still, that's when it's doing its work.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Martin. Appreciate your call. Now, we have, I believe this is Randy that has joined us today.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Uh-huh.
How are you? I have two brief questions. The first pertains to the situation in South America with the spottings of UFOs.
Mhm.
You mentioned a few weeks ago that possibly footage of that would be on television in some form. Did that ever happen?
Well, Paul Shepard will be here in 2 weeks. He'll be the guest for the whole show. He's the one who took the footage. I don't know exactly what he got. He did not, as I understand, get pictures of the craft themselves, but he was there right after they were, and he was with captains of industry, military leaders, and political leaders in Argentina and Brazil, as well as a number of other people. So he'll go over his. It was really quite a. I envy him.
Yeah.
I would have liked to go and put on my Indiana Jones hat and gone down there with him.
Right. The second question pertains to a story run on CNN, I think on Tuesday. They reported a story of a large UFO being spotted in the Midwest, actually covering most of the United States from Texas to Illinois to Washington, I believe. I don't remember exactly. And I wondered if you had any further information. The government reported it as being a natural phenomenon, but CNN tended to think otherwise.
Well, the government will always report anything that relates to a UFO sighting, even though an entire city may have seen it, which has happened as swamp gas or a natural phenomenon of some kind.
Randy,
So just understand that going in.
in one of the government explanations of UFOs, there's a case that was looked at, and the final result was this case is definitely a natural occurrence that has happened so rarely that it has never been reported before or since. Okay, that's an official government explanation.
Okay. Right, so, but neither one of you have heard any more than what I know of it, correct?
That's right.
Sir.
Okay.
We have another phenomenon that happens in the news media, and that is that a rear-ender on the San Diego freeway is far more important and interesting to the news editors of the local news outlets and television outlets than a massive sighting all over the United States of this strange craft.
Right. Well, I wish they were further reported because people like myself are interested in knowing more about.
We'll try to update you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Randy. Appreciate your call very much. And we have Barbara on the line. Hi, Barb.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
I'm just fine.
I really enjoy your show. I listen every week.
I enjoy having you aboard.
Thank you. I'd like to ask your guest if he ever uses crystals to heal viral diseases.
We use crystals. I have to be very careful how I phrase this now, Barbara, okay? Because the minute you use the word heal, you get some people all up in arms and bent out of shape.
Right, I know.
So let me phrase this the way I would phrase it in a open class situation, which is that we use crystals to help balance out the imbalances of the body, whatever they are. I think the belief of most people in fields that are predominantly metaphysical is that disease happens when there's a form of emotional or mental imbalance, and when that isn't corrected, eventually it manifests in some physical way. For example, let's give you a quickie one. I know a lady who's just recently hurt her foot rather badly, and it has to do with going forward in life and starting to make some changes. And I've seen that happen with a number of people who are just on the verge of making an important change in their life, and whoop-oh, they bang their toes, they trip over things, they slam into chairs, and next thing you know is they're all laid up. And it's got to do with their own apprehensions. Now, there are certainly scientific things that happen, medical things that happen that cause illness, but we are finding in this field that there are some very unusual psychological things that cause illness, and that's where we do most of our work. Balancing the energy fields around the body, what psychics would call the aura, what scientists would call the bioenergy field of the body, balancing it out and fixing the imbalances that way.
Now, do you use a crystal that you have in your presence, or is it in water, or?
Well, when we get to a point that we start going into different areas of crystal use, we try to have different crystals for different purposes. The same way you have different kinds of knives when you sit down at a table or work in a kitchen.
Right.
And I have, and what I suggest to my students have, is not only 2 clear points, that's the long bar type crystals to work with, and then we work with something called the 4-color healing stones, which are a piece of rose crystal, which is the pink, a piece of amethyst, which is the purple, the blue, which is lapis lazuli for the mental levels, and green for the physical. It's called green quartz. And we have a technique that we teach in the Crystal Healing Workshop, and we actually give those crystals out as part of the workshop.
And you will be giving more information about that.
We will definitely, in the second hour, talk all about the tour and the Crystal Healing Workshop.
Sure, we'll let you know about that.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll tell you something unscientific here, Barbara. My wife wears a crystal around her neck, and Dale gave it to her, a beautiful crystal, and she got a wart. Well, you know, a lady doesn't want to have a wart.
No.
So she just rubbed the wart with the crystal that Dale gave her that she wears all the time. And guess what happened to the wart?
It went away.
It went away.
Wonderful.
Now, nobody cut it. Sorry, Doc. Couldn't use the knife on it. It just went away. Now, that's unscientific, but that is an observation of a journalist and a newsman.
That sounds wonderful.
I happen to know that the wart went away when she rubbed it with the crystal.
Well, keep up the good work, both of you.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Bye-bye.
Glad to have you aboard. It's Open Mind tonight. With me is Ho. We're talking crystals.
Hello? I'm fascinated. I have been listening to KABC ever since they went talk years ago.
Well, good for you.
I've never heard this show before.
Where have you been, Berta? It's
I
only been
don't
on the air
know.
since
I thought I knew everything about KABC. But tell me, what are crystals? Where do you get them? What is this?
All right, go for it.
Okay, what are crystals? Crystals are a life form in the mineral kingdom. When Bill started off this evening mentioning that crystals are alive, I thought that was marvelous because that is one of the most important things to me. Crystals are a life form and need to be treated as such. And they grow in the mineral kingdom. The whole planet is made out of crystals. It's the building block of life for minerals. Every time you exhale, you breathe crystals. You exhale crystals. And we've been using them to try and help balance out imbalance both in man and the planet. That's a general answer to your question about what they are. As far as where you can get them, nowadays you can get them at a lot of different places. A lot of bookstores have them. The metaphysical New Age bookstores and centers have them. And we will be having a very, very large display of crystals. In fact, it'll be the largest display of crystals ever on any tour that we've ever sponsored. And we are simply presenting this to the listeners of Open Mind. It has not been advertised to anyone except to them. And we're going to have some free lectures and some pictures of the crystal skulls to look at and a whole bunch of things. And we'll talk about that in the next hour in detail.
Well, I'll continue to listen because I'm fascinated.
Stay with it.
Well, I'm fascinated, Berta, that you've missed this show all these years.
So am I. I can't believe it.
Well, now you know to stay up on Saturday night.
Thank you.
What have you been doing on Saturday night, Berta?
Go to sleep mostly.
Oh.
Early to bed, early to rise.
Well, not on Saturday night, huh?
I'll try not to from now on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. She's cute. Okay, Linda, you're on.
Yeah, I would like to ask your guest a question. He referred to using crystals for reprogramming in the alpha state. And I would like to hear him talk about that, and I'll hang up and listen on the radio.
Well, you can stay on the air. Stay with us because I'll answer it generally.
Okay.
And then if you have a more specific question, I'll take that too. We have found two things happen when a person holds a quartz crystal for a few moments. The first is that they begin to feel relaxed, and that's very good for chiropractors, people who do massage, because the person begins to relax and that level of resistance is gone. The other thing that happens is that the brainwave pattern goes from beta, which is your normal wake state level, into alpha. And that is where all the reprogramming takes place. That's the level of, that's the first state of hypnosis. It's the lightest level of sleep. It's the level where you can begin to reprogram the mind. And from there, we work in two different areas. One that I simply call reprogramming, which deals with old habits. I'll tell you a story about that in a second. And the other, which is more of the psychic type of work. And I think that if there's a line between them, it's very thin, but some people see a very major line between them, so that's how we break it down. And just as an example of some of the kind of work that's been done, I'll take a story that Dale tells us about a young lady that she wasn't so young, she was in her 60s. And she had been bitten by a dog when she was very young, and she was very frightened of dogs. And so, using a crystal technique that we have, we went inside the crystal with her, and we reprogrammed the way she responded to dogs. We changed the way she remembered that thing happening. We didn't change the facts of it, you understand. What we changed was the way she emotionally responded. Now, we assume when we work on one-to-one with somebody that it's going to take 3 or 4 times before we're going to really get some sort of a change. But in this case, what happened is they walked out of the building, and as fate would have it, there was a huge Doberman running up and down the street without a leash. And almost as if this dog knew her, he ran up to her, jumped up on his hind legs, put the 2 front legs on this lady's shoulders, and everyone in there thought this lady was going to pass out. She leaned down, pet the dog on the head, and it was over. That was all there was. She was fine. Now, not everybody gets that quicker result, but most people can do the exercises because they are very simple, and all you have to do is relax the mind. The crystal is a big help in that way.
Is there a particular crystal that is used for this kind of programming?
Not necessarily. There are certainly crystals that might be better for some individuals than others, depending on a half a dozen different factors. But the large clear points really are fine for this kind of work. And we find that if people are attracted to something else, there's usually a good reason for it. The different colors have different properties, work in different areas, and get different responses. So if somebody is pulled towards a different color, let's say a pink color, we can pretty much determine that they have a need for some emotional type of work, as opposed to, say, if they pick one of the mental stones, which would be the citrine or the lapis.
Okay.
But again, we're speaking very generally now, because everybody is a different individual, and everybody has different responses to different things.
Very good.
Okay, does that help you now, Linda?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, thank you very much for checking in with us here.
Thank you.
I do believe that we have to backtrack here a little bit.
Okay.
In the commercial that we ran for our good friends over at Alexandria 2 bookstore,
Mm-hmm.
we evidently had the wrong date on your appearance over there. You're going to be on Friday,
We're
right?
going to be there Friday doing a class on... Okay, we're going to be there Friday doing a class on psychic development using crystals.
I think I said Saturday on the
And I think you said Saturday. It's definitely Friday at
Definitely
7:30.
And Victoria, Ralph, I'm sorry we got it wrong, but we've corrected it here. Okay? We'll be back to our callers. We'll be talking about crystals with Ho. I'm Bill Jenkins.
To mention it now, which is that we've brought together all our crystal dealers for a display of crystals that is just wild. It's the largest display of crystals we've ever had on a tour. And that will be tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday from 11 to 11 at the Sportsman's Lodge Hotel in Studio City. And on Sunday and Monday, I'll be doing free lectures at 2 and at 7:30 on the use of crystals and answering questions. And then Tuesday, we have a very special lecture, which we'll be taping for our crystal cassette tapes on crystals and releasing emotional blocks.
The tapes, by the way, I thoroughly enjoyed them. You do
Thank you.
an excellent job on those.
This is actually the first time we've got them into all the local stores, but we've never really announced them at all. We were going to do that tonight. So here they are, folks. 3 tapes on crystals.
Well, Dee Dee will be glad to tell you about that when you call it.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Ann, who is on the line here. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Well, I'm fine.
I listen to your show every week when the Dodgers are playing. The way they're playing, they might as well not be on.
Oh, come on now. They're going to pull it out.
I hope so.
They did it today.
Maybe we should give them all crystal.
There's an idea.
That's an idea.
What I wanted to ask you, I went to the Alexandra lecture with Master Ho the last time he was there, and I got a cluster of crystals to put in the refrigerator, like you said, and it didn't work. What did I do wrong?
Okay, let's go through the steps again. What we're doing is we're getting a cluster, which has lots of little points, and putting it on the top shelf of the refrigerator.
Right, I did that.
And then we are slowly turning the thermostat down. Because you see, if you do it immediately, it's just too sudden a change. You have to slowly turn it down.
Do I have to, any kind of a ritual or?
No. Let's get the mysticism out.
Water or something?
No, we try to keep rituals down to a very, very low rumble. No, you just put it in there and slowly turn the thing down, and you should find that you can keep turning it down.
Well, what happened to me, Ann, when Dale gave me my crystal, he said, stick it in your refrigerator.
Right.
And when I got home at 12:30, I did beautifully stick it in the refrigerator and forgot about it.
Right.
Until that afternoon when I went into the refrigerator to get a bottle of beer.
Yeah, and it was frozen?
It was frozen.
Mine didn't.
And I said, oh, I remember. So I've really had to turn it back, and I have one of those great big, two-door refrigerators. And
Yeah.
it's always running, and you can see the gas meter. I mean, the meter outside, not
Yeah.
the gas meter, but
Mine
the
is like
electric
that
meter.
too.
Sometimes it thinks it's a helicopter, I believe. And so I'm very happy to have it in there.
You know what else is strange, Ann, is that
Yeah.
since we did it, we've been doing it for 4 years now, and we used to have milk that would go bad every 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, that's what I noticed was that I can leave a pack of milk in there for 2 weeks and it's just as fresh as the day I put it in there.
Isn't that amazing?
And the vegetables don't seem to go
Yeah.
south on you, do they?
No, I got a tomato that's about a week old that's still good.
I wouldn't say it was the crystal that was doing that. It just happened to start happening after you put the crystal in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, does it make any difference what kind of I have amethyst crystals. Is that any different than the square one?
There is a difference between them, but it won't affect what's happening in your refrigerator.
Oh,
The
okay.
difference between them gets important when we start talking about spiritual things or what we call crystal healing or energy balancing, but your refrigerator doesn't know the difference, and they both work beautifully.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
Bye-bye.
It's Open Mind. I'm Bill Jenkins with Hope. Special Crystal. You want to join us for that? Come on in then. We will be going into it in detail on October 11th when Nick Nazarino gets here again. But it is the fascinating crystal skull. Explain to me the crystal skull, Hope.
Oh boy, the crystal skull has got to be the ninth wonder of the world, and explaining the crystal skull is a marvelously fun but complex task. Basically, for those people who have not heard anything about it, the crystal skull is a piece of quartz, which it weighs, I think it's about 5 pounds, and it is anatomically shaped in the form of a human skull. It is anatomically perfect. Now, we're talking about, in particular, the Mitchell-Hedges skull. There are other crystal skulls. Nick believes that there are about 13, but they've located 8 to 10. I say that because just as I was leaving San Francisco, we got word that they found a couple more. And I haven't heard anything about that yet, so I can't speak about where
And these were all found in the same general area in
Central America.
Central America and Mexico.
Right. But the Mitchell-Hedges skull was found by Anna Mitchell-Hedges in 1927. And nobody knows how it was made. To this day, we couldn't really duplicate it with all the equipment and technology that we have. And it's always been considered a wonder of the world. Some people refer to it as the skull of doom, and you see it in a number of different museums, or you find it in books occasionally. But no one's really been able to crack the secret of the skull, what it is, how it was made. And then Nick and his group have been working with them for quite a while, and using something that we call scrying, which is crystal gazing, we've been able to see certain things in there that only complicate the issue. Those things being UFOs and mermaids, animal-man mixtures, groups of people wearing unusual outfits that some people might call space outfits.
Amazing.
It really is. And the more time you spend with the skull and the more time you look at the photographs and things, the more amazing it really gets.
Well, the thing of it here is that you can look at the skull whenever you first come into its presence, and it's just a crystal skull sitting there. But then as you look at it, all of this imagery starts playing before your eyes, and quite often you're watching, it looks like the geological formation of the planet Earth and the movement of the continents around.
Now, that's what Nick was talking about,
Right.
and we have to explain something, because what's happened is that people come down to see the skull or to see the pictures, and they don't see that right off. So what we need to explain is that Nick has seen those things because Nick has locked himself into rooms with the crystal skull for days on end, where he's had the opportunity. And most people, through either a photograph or 5 or 10 minutes with the skull, don't have a chance to see all of that.
Right.
But yes, if you spend some time with it, because we have certainly spent a lot of time looking at slides and photographs, and I've spent quite a bit of time with the skull when I was in San Francisco. And you can certainly begin to see those things in there. And you do see the changes in the Earth and the geological changes that go on. And
It'll also play back things that are in your own consciousness from your own childhood.
the skull, if I phrase it this way, I don't know, I may confuse some people, but the skull acts like a mini computer.
Yeah.
And it puts information out and it takes information in. It's my belief, it's an opinion, but it's my belief it takes in a lot more than it puts out.
It could be.
While you're reading it, it is reading you. And we've definitely had people experience that and say that they could feel that happening.
Nick was also telling us that it has another amazing property with photographs. You can take pictures of the pictures that it's showing, and your pictures then, after they have been made into photographs, change.
Yes. Now, we have seen this with both the photographs and with the slides. And I think it happens faster with a slide because with the slide you have light going through it, which is an energy change. But even in the photographs, you can still, if you take a few minutes, and it really, you see, it's people to expect, when you talk about, I'll tell you about a phone call I just had this week, people expect things a little differently or a little more magically than they happen. I had somebody call me up that was talking about crystal balls and thought that all you do is sit in front of the ball and suddenly it plays you a movie. And it's not quite that simple. There's a certain amount of discipline that you, as the crystal ball reader, have to go through, and a certain amount of patience. You have to give it a certain amount of time. But once you devote that little bit of time to it, yes, the whole world opens up to you. And it mentally, just as holding a crystal will change the mental state, the crystal skull is, to my mind, and to the people I've dealt with it, it's very much alive in the standpoint that it does transfer information back and forth. People get tremendous feelings from it. Anna Mitchell-Hedges, or Sammy is her nickname, has told us about different things that have happened in terms of what we would call crystal healings. I think it is probably one of the most remarkable things on the planet. And, you know, I know your listeners know about these things because they listen to the Gladdens and they listen to Patrick Flanagan and things. But I get very frustrated because what seems to happen is the establishment will say, this is the way something worked. Man appeared on the earth, 10 million years ago or something,
Whatever.
And that's it. And then they turn around, and when they find fossils, I have a list of 40 fossils that show things like sandal prints with dinosaur prints. And science says, well, we don't know what that is, so we'll just ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And here with the crystal skull, it's the same thing. It's just something that no one seems to know much about.
You would think that the great aerospace firms, the great universities would want to study the crystal skulls because they are a phenomenon and they are real. They are documented. They are a fact. But academia doesn't want to deal with that.
No, and it's unfortunate because we get people who are in those organizations that come to us and sort of pull us aside and say, you know, this is what I work with, and the people I work with probably wouldn't appreciate my being here. So that will happen. It's unfortunate that you have to go through that to get some of this information.
Okay, well, we just thought we'd touch on the crystal skull. There may be some of you that would want to ask more about it. It is a phenomenon.
And one of the things that we will do is we will bring out the photographs that were shown in San Francisco, and we'll have them for display. Again, it's a free thing, so there's no admission to see it. And you can just come down and look at the photographs all you want.
I've watched the photographs and I watched them change. And it's not like looking at clouds where you see one thing in a cloud and I see another. I mean, it's a changing that goes on in a photograph. Try that one on. Okay, Brad, you're on.
Yes, I'm curious, is it ever necessary to recharge crystals? And the reason I ask is, one time I put a crystal in a glass of water and put it in the refrigerator and it did freeze. However, I went to dazzle my friends with this feat and nothing happened. And I'm curious, I've also heard that placing it in salt water is a method of recharging. I just wonder if that's true.
Well, first, let's start with the salt water first. When Dale and I were first teaching about crystals, we told people to put them in salt or in salt water because we felt that that was what you might call a foolproof system. There are better ways to recharge a crystal than that. First of all, salt does not recharge a crystal at all. Salt actually stops the action within the crystal and slows it down. It's what you might call a neutralizing or a cleansing of the crystal. It does not charge it. Putting energy into a crystal charges it. And to do that, you could either put it in the sun, which takes a certain amount of time, or you could do a mental exercise where you can visualize light going into the crystal, or you could do something even simpler, which we mentioned once before on this station, and that is the light invocation. And the light invocation is 3 sentences.
I think I know this.
I invoke the light of the Christ within. I am a clear and perfect channel. Light is my guide. And that 3 sentences, if you hold the crystal and say it 3 times, actually will balance out the energies of the crystal.
Now, we don't know why.
No,
What it is about those words. Don't want to be mystic with you, but maybe it's just in the mantra, maybe it's in the chant, maybe it's in the energy.
We believe it's in the thought form, but again, there's really no way to prove that. And as Bill stressed, and I want to stress, I try very hard. I do teach some classes which could be called mystical. But when it comes to crystals, I try very hard to stay away from mystical things, keep it fairly middle of the road, and fairly logical. Because you see, it's not, if you understand that what we're doing is taking crystals and using them the same way science uses them, to amplify energy, the same way they do it in radio and television, or to focus energy as in lasers, or to transform it the same way they use them in solar panels. What we're doing is we're using those same properties, but we're using them with people instead of machinery. And unfortunately, people are a little harder to measure. And so that falls into what we call metaphysics.
So you wouldn't be hearing us tonight if it weren't for a crystal. We did that at the top of the show. But we have a nice crystal back there, Big Blue, who is our transmitter. And he's a good guy.
Now the reason you would want to recharge a crystal, I mean, there could be a number of reasons. You might want to boost the energy level of it. But we talk about recharging when we talk about wearing them, because one of the properties of crystal is to store information. That's why they're used in computer chips. And what will happen is a crystal will store, one that you're wearing, will store all the emotions in it that you go through. So, for example, let's say that you had a crummy ride home on the freeway and told the guy behind you or in front of you exactly how you thought he drove. You might want to get home and just take a moment to clear that crystal of the energies, so that you don't carry that around with you all the time.
I think it'd probably be a good idea not to wear them on the freeway.
That may be an idea too, yes.
Could you put them in salt water in that case?
Yeah, in that case, what it will do is it will neutralize the energies and bring it back. But that you have to do overnight. That takes, roughly 8 hours, let's say. This is a 30-second thing that you can just, you say it, and it'll do it.
And how often should you do this? Or is there a set criteria on something like that?
The crystal that I wear, I do every morning when I get up. Actually, I take them off when I get into the shower. Not that you have to, but I do. And when I put them back on, I take all of 30 seconds to clear them.
Every time you foul them up, you ought to clear them, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
So that means you're doing the invocation just all the time.
And I do it anytime I put crystals in anything that I'm going to ingest, such as near my food or into my water. I would clear it then, too.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you very much, Brad.
Bye.
Glad to have you aboard.
Thanks.
And we have Howard.
Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Say about a year and a half ago, I think it was, you had, I believe, one of the first crystal broadcasts, and I was very interested, obviously, specifically in two types of crystals. One was for the refrigeration, of course, and then the second was for clarifying water. I live on a boat, and clear water is always a problem for storing any length of time. And the refrigeration, of course, requires power to run the refrigerator, so obviously that crystal would be totally advantageous to reduce that power consumption. I got the book, and I bought the two crystals of each type, and over the last year and a half, nothing's happened.
Whoa.
And I don't know whether I was one of those 1 in 10, but I've tried everything. I've recharged it in the sunlight. I've cleaned it in the salt water. You name it. I've tried it, but nothing has happened. Now the refrigerator, of course, Master Ho, I believe you sent to me a cluster of a little purple segment of
Amethyst clusters.
So, and the refrigerator, the size is 1.5 cubic feet. It's right up in the very top. I've tried it in the very bottom. I've tried it in the middle. I've tried it.
Howard, occasionally there is a couple of things here. First of all, 1 out of every 10 people it doesn't work for, and we don't know why. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with belief, because I could sit here and tell you stories forever about people who didn't believe it would work and it worked. So it doesn't seem to have anything to do with belief. But for some reason, occasionally it doesn't happen. Now, one of the things that we caught on to is that some of the newer, higher, the models at the higher end of the line, some of them have some sort of self-regulatory thermostats in them. So you don't really notice the difference. What happens is that as time goes on, you get your electrical bill, and perhaps your electrical bill is lower. It's something that you don't actually sense because the unit, has a balancing thermostat in it. So some people have had that happen to them.
Well, let me, while you're right there, let me inject this, if I may. The refrigerator unit that we have, as I say, I live on a boat, okay, and we generate our own electricity, It is basically a 12-volt system. It runs for 30 minutes and is off for 30 minutes. That's a normal duty cycle. Okay? And it has to maintain at least approximately 40 degrees to keep the food even reasonably safe and cold. Nothing has changed in that. In other words, the unit still runs 30 minutes and off 30 minutes. It is.
And the refrigerator isn't getting any colder.
That's correct. It's basically nothing has happened, nothing has changed. And whether, as you say, I'm a 1 in 10 that maybe I got a bad crystal, or whether I'm doing something wrong, perhaps you could advise.
Well, the only thing I can advise, first of all, I don't think that there's such a thing as a bad crystal. I would charge the crystal the way we described before. That might be one thing. And the only other thing I can suggest is try it again, put it in the top shelf. And do you have a thermostat in there that you can turn up and down?
Oh, well, no. Well, I do, but it's not a thermostat per se. It only lengthens the cycle time.
It may have something to do with the unit itself then.
Oh, so your regulator then is regulating cycle time. It's not regulating temperature.
That's correct. In other words, the longer it runs, the colder the unit's going to get.
Well, if your refrigerator got down to its 40 degrees and it did it in 10 minutes, would it keep on running 30 minutes anyway?
No.
It'd stop. It would turn it off. Yeah.
Now, I also, when we were living in the apartment, of course, I tried to stay in the standard home type refrigerator, and it didn't do anything there. Because I thought maybe because I had initially brought it to the boat, and that didn't happen, so I took it home and to the apartment and ran it there.
And you put it on the top shelf of the refrigerator.
Oh, yes.
And you turn the thermostat down slowly. Gee, I don't know. Like I said, 1 out of every 10 people, it gets crazy. It doesn't happen, and we don't know why.
There's something about you and crystals, Howard.
Yeah, Howard.
It could be, but I'm thoroughly for it, and I believe in the capabilities of it. Psychologically, perhaps I am totally in agreement with it. But it just now both of these crystals, each for its own application.
Well, now with the water one, we do a presentation, and I've done it every night now for 5 years. I wouldn't put this up in front of hundreds of people a night if I didn't think I knew it was going to work. But we've done that where we've taken 2 glasses of tap water or say a bottled water. Tap water is easier to taste the difference because tap water has such a marvelous taste all by itself. But oh yeah, doesn't it have that marvelous metal taste that everybody likes with the ammonia and chlorine?
I haven't tasted it in a long time.
Well, I don't drink that either anymore now. I drink the bottled waters and I put the crystal in it. But I'll share a story with you. The student called up and told me 2 days ago, and he said, if you want to say it, you can. So this student, whose name is Daniel, had a plastic bottle. He was on a camping trip in the desert. Had a plastic bottle of water with a crystal in it. And make a long story short, he lost the bottle, came home, went back 80 days later, and the bottle was still there. Now, it had been baking in the sun in plastic. You know what water with plastic tastes like. And he opened the bottle, and he passed it around to all his friends, and everybody said it was the most refreshing water they'd ever had. There was no plastic taste at all. And I can tell you that being a earthquake-conscious Californian now, Sam, I'm from Boston, where we don't really get earthquakes. We get blizzards, so I'm being trained in earthquake preparedness, and we have lots of bottles of water at the house with plastic, and we have crystals in each one of them, and sometimes those bottles will sit. We had bottles sit there for about 1.5 years, and when we finally opened them up and used them, you couldn't taste any plastic at all. The water tasted just delightful. So maybe it's your water, Howard.
That's a possibility.
But if you come on down, we'll do a water test.